a recognition called an honorary trustee of the Ampersand Club, which means you've been around too long. But the two gentlemen in the front have been members since the rebirth of the Ampersand Club, and Greg will probably talk a little bit about that. There was a lull in the club and then it was kind of brought back. So they've both been members since about 1980. I'm just going to give you a very short thing on both of them. So Rob has been a member, for over 40 years. He served as the president in the 1990s and has been the publication officer since then for over 20 years. And he's been influential in a number of books, the books in the rocks, the books on the rocks, books with the rock. No, that's only 2 rock books, but a number of the publications we've done. He's hosted numerous meetings at his house and numerous winter parties when his living room wasn't full of books, and has been the auctioneer for many of the Ampersand auctions. Rob has also been Ampersand's liaison with the Fellowship of American Bibliophilic Societies and also the Minnesota Antiquarian Book Fair as far as getting us in. So to recognize for Rob for all his years of work in support of the Ampersand Club, we present you with a certificate of recognition and bestow you the title of honorary trustee.
John, that's pretty nice.
Yep. And then for Patrick Coleman, Pat has been a member also for over 40 years. You're both started right about the same time. Pat has served as the club archivist from the early 2000s till the time he retired in 2023. He continues to serve on the board as a director at large. He's been the club's most prolific presenter over the years, giving talks on a regular basis and also leading additional tours of various exhibits at the Minnesota History Center. And Pat has also been an important liaison with the larger Minnesota book community. He's served on numerous boards and has always brought in the Ampersand Club. So to recognize Pat for all his years of work and support, we also present him with a recognition and bestow him the title of honorary trustee. That does not mean you can retire, either one of you.
Thank you.
It just means you have to clear You have to clear some bookshelf space to hang that on a bookshelf.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Okay. So if anybody wants to buy these guys a drink afterwards, I'm sure they'll accept it. So now I'd like to introduce Gregor Campbell. And Gregor has actually been a member longer than these two guys that just got their awards, and is also an honorary trustee of the Ampersand Club, to give his presentation on the history of the Ampersand Club as he remembers it, or knows it, or something like that.
Remember it.
For some reason, I got roped into this thing, and Ampersand, as I remember it, Ampersand began 1930, 1931, that's my understanding, with a meeting with Frank Walter. I think there's a library named after him. And Arnott Leslie was a paper merchant, Leslie Paper Company. They got a group of people together, 31 people. Eventually that expanded into 35. That included my father for some unknown reason. They must have been desperate for members at that point. But it stayed at 35 for a long time. You could not, those people could invite guests to meetings, but there are no more members allowed, just 35 period. That has now become a memberships of 118 that we have on mailing labels. We have lost 3 members recently. For those of you that have had your head in the sand, Harry Lerner passed away. John's wife, Joanne, passed away. And Jana Pullman is no longer with us either. We miss them all. They were good friends, everyone. My first meeting that I remember going to the Ampersand was held at the Minnesota Press Club in the Radisson Hotel on 7th Street Across the street was the Nankin Cafe. Around the corner from the Dayton's ramp was Candyland, the caramel corn place, wonderful caramel corn. But we went up to the press room and our press club. I'm not sure what floor it was on. In the keepsake, you'll read a little bit more about this. But I remember walking in there. I didn't know anybody. My father said, "Come, it will be a great honor. There are only 35 members." I didn't know any of these people. I was 3 years out of the Navy maybe, and just trying to figure out my way in the bookbinding business with my father. But he said, "It's a great honor. You'll enjoy this." There I met Emerson Wooling, Jim Ekman, and Harold Kittleson. I knew Harold from before because I bought a book from him at Powers Bookstore. He ran the bookstore at Powers. But I don't remember what the meeting was about. All I remember is walking in and smelling cigar smoke, cigarette smoke, pipe smoke, people sitting at the bar biting off the end of cigars, spitting it on the floor. No kidding. The one thing that I do know that has changed is smoking. Up until 2007, these would have come with an ashtray on your table. 2027, I'm sorry. No, 2007. Minnesota Clean Air and Indoor Air Act. The good old days. Anyway, the changes that I've seen are kind of almost astounding to me. We now have women members. Yeah. That we had visitors that were women. There was an honorary member, Greta Countryman, from the Minneapolis Public Library. That there's a book called Friends Romans that mentions that meeting. And in 1971, a woman named Jane McCarthy, who was a book designer for the University of Minnesota Press, was honored at a meeting at the Campus Club, I believe. But Campus Club's still around?
Yes.
It is?
113th meeting 2 days ago.
No kidding. Huh. Anyway, she was honored at the University of Minnesota Campus Club in 1971. And she was not allowed to attend meetings. She was just give as a guest. Neither she or Countryman were ever allowed to attend meetings. They were just only guests and honorary members of the Ampersand Club. In 1974, women were invited as guests to Ampersand Club meetings, evidently to assess the appropriateness of having them in the audience. At that point, 2 Ampersand members never attended another meeting. I won't give you their names unless you want to know who they were. That was 1974. 74. That also was the same year women were allowed to have credit cards in their own name without their husband's signature or their father's signature. Can you believe that? 1974. You remember that, Peggy?
I remember how hard it was to keep my name.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that was 1974. Now, the first women members that we know of, that we can think of, that actually joined Ampersand Club as women, Rob thinks it might be Marianne Tiblin.
Yeah, Marianne.
Is she here? I think it might be Carol Ernest. I don't know. They're both old, long-time members of Ampersand Club, but we don't know who the first woman member that actually signed up was. Okay, where am I here? Meetings in the 1980s were a little bit more regular than the previously. Previous meetings were a little sporadic. There were a lot of field trips. I know that Ampersand Club members went down to see Emerson Wooling's print shop. They went to see Fred Ekman's print shop, Jim Ekman's print shop. Jim Ekman is an interesting guy. He worked at Mayo Clinic as a designer of publications. He had a great type collection and a book collection. He and his wife loved martinis. Anyway, I went to see him one time after this Ampersand visit to his place. He had a linotype machine in his basement, a little bitty gray house in Rochester. To get the linotype machine in, he excavated the driveway, a concrete driveway alongside of the house, pounded out part of the foundation walls, had a tow truck come in, hoist this linotype, or dug a hole down to the side of the foundation, tore out the wall, had a tow truck come in and hoist it down with a chain, then move it into his basement on pipes and rollers. And I saw it down there, I actually did. That was all filled in later, but he had the Ampersand Club come down to see this linotype in his basement. He had a great print or type collection, great book collection, and he loved martinis. There were various trips down there. I know the Ampersand Club went up to Hillmonastic Manuscript Library one time to see the stuff up there. And they went, we had printing in the rocks and Sudan Mine. We've had field trips. We had one that tried to find Gaylord in his printing facility down in Stockholm, Wisconsin. The bus driver got lost and couldn't find the place. They were 2 hours late getting there. But we've had field trips before. They've always been kind of fun. And we now have pretty regular meetings, a good 8 or 9 a year on almost monthly basis, except during the summer months. We're canceled for the academic holidays, I guess, or summer months. But at any rate, the Ampersand Club used to have an annual business meeting also, in which programming was discussed, and there was election of officers or nominations for officers. The voting procedure at those times, there's the actual printed ballot, and there were 3 nominations for each office that had to be voted on by the entire membership. And I remember that vote. Steve Anderson asked me to run for president. I remember the voting at the Sheraton Ritz Hotel, and I told Steve, "You can only put my name on this ballot if you promise I won't be elected." Well, I got it, and was happy to serve for a while as the Ampersand president. Also in the 1980s, the invitations to Ampersand meetings became much more letterpress oriented. Previous to that, there'd been postcards and notes and stuff sent back and forth. There really hadn't been a lot of letterpress invitations that were available. In the 1980s, it became kind of commonplace for us to have letterpress invitations to club meetings. Part of that was because Jerry Lang had to pay rent. And he was looking to make $100 a meeting for Ampersand invitations, but a lot of it just had to do with the craft that was coming alive again in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Alan Kornblum with Coffee House Press, Jerry Lang with Beeler Press, and the various other people who were doing that work in town at that time were all volunteering their efforts. Phil Gallo certainly, and we welcome them. That's the history of Ampersand as I know it, except that somebody said they wanted me to talk about the bindery a little bit. In 1979, I bought this old building in downtown Minneapolis and put our bindery in there. I had purchased the business from my father in '76. He retired and moved to Mexico. And we floated around in a couple of rental locations for a while, and finally I decided we got to buy something. So I bought this building downtown, and that's part of this, the house that Phil built that's a kind of a handout up there, the house that Phil lived in. Anyway, Ampersand had a clubhouse in that place for a while, up on the 3rd floor. We had a few meetings there, and we also had accommodations available for visiting people who were coming from out of town. We used to bring in out-of-towners quite regularly. They were always looking for a place to stay. They're happy to have a gig at Ampersand Club to do a talk. And we had a little library in that Ampersand Clubhouse. Eventually it all got auctioned off, and it was fundraising for the club at that point. But anyway, Campbell-Logan Bindery was the company. I'm a bookbinder. My son Duncan is now operating the place and doing a bang-up job.
Was it cave paper in the basement?
Pardon me?
Cave paper?
The cave paper.
Cave paper was in that building, yes. They were in the basement down there. As was Phil's printing hermetic press was in there. There were a whole bunch of people in that building. Rulon was there for a while. David Rathman was in there for a while.
I think we can consider Greg as a person who was very generous in making those facilities available to his art.
When they could afford it, rent was really steep.
That's not what I heard.
And then it's Memorial Day weekend. I wanted to talk about some of my old favorite Ampersanders that I miss dearly. One of those is Harold Kittleson, who was kind of an Anglophile. In his later years, he wanted to make one more trip to England, and he had this collection of books. I had a collection of books. My collection was books about books, printing, publishing, or paper making, some bookbinding stuff. Harold thought his books on publishing should be part of this. And I agreed to buy Harold's library. He needed $5,000 and he wanted to go to England with it. So I bought his library. I had special bookcases built for them. I still have the bookcases. But Harold used to come over once in a while when he came back from England to look at this magnificent library and these brand new bookcases that I had built. He'd come over and look at them. Dale Schwee would come along with him. We'd give them a little glass of sherry to look at the books. They'd sit there and marvel at all of Harold's memories in these books. The books all had, many of the books, had little pieces of newspaper torn out and notes written in them that Harold had stuck in there about the author or a review of the book or something. And so anyway, there were, I don't know how many there were. There were a lot of books. One day Harold was over there looking at them, and there was still some empty space in these bookshelves. They weren't all filled up with Harold's books. And I had something in there, I don't know what it was, Sporting News or something was propped up against it. Harold walked up and looked at these books and, this doesn't belong here. Kind of like a dead cat. He was heading off to the side. But I remember Harold a lot. I think very highly of him. He was a great guy. Then there's Austin McLean and his wife, Sue. Austin and Harold kind of resurrected the Ampersand Club from near death, and probably in the 50s or 60s, 60s I would guess. And Austin ran the club for many, many years out of the special collections of the University of Minnesota, was where he was ensconced. His little house in South Minneapolis, he dug up the front yard and planted the whole thing in an enormous floral ampersand design in the front yard. Everything he dug up, he put in the backyard, and that was Mount Ampersand. But it was just incredible. Austin and Sue were great people too. And there's Rosemary Furtak. Everybody loved Rosemary. She was our treasurer for years and years. Wonderful lady. We didn't live too far away from her when it snowed heavily. I would sneak over there and shovel her steps early in the morning so she didn't have to worry about that when she got out to Walker Arts Center. Jody Williams is another one I remember a lot. Larry Dingman, who's responsible for us having a booth at the Antiquarian Book Fair at the Fairgrounds. Elmer Anderson, who many of us knew very well, a great gentleman, one of the wisest people I've ever met in my life. Very generous, kind of the founding idea behind Minnesota Center for Book Arts, certainly a bankroll behind it, and a great, great guy. He was a great book collector, a wonderful member of Ampersand Club, and I miss Elmer a lot. I think I might almost cry sometimes. There's Will Powers. Will Powers was a printer, a book designer. I think the last employment he had here was the Historical Society, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you
We
did
did
that last
on
program.
the rocks, and we hung out at his place and had chili.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he did that, didn't he do the demonstration at Campbell-Logan?
Yes, he did.
That was
The Ludlow machine. Yeah.
Was he a designer for Ludlow?
You know, yeah, he was kind of. He worked, when I first met him,
He worked with Roddy Steinauer.
yeah, it was at Steinauer. I first met him at Steinauer. I was going through New England visiting people. Someday I should go in and see Roderick Steinauer. So I wanted to see him, and he didn't have time for me. But here's this guy from Minnesota, Will Powers. He'll take you around. That's where I met Will. But he was quite talented guy. He also worked at Arian Press, I believe, in San Francisco for a while.
He did the menus for Chez Panisse for years.
Ah, and there's John and Molly Harris. I don't know if many people remember John and Molly, but they were great ampersanders. John was a former, I think, diplomat, a foreign service of some kind. He was an attorney. And then he started something called Pogo Press that was very interested in local history projects. Finally, Al Mackler, little Al Mackler, with his deerstalker cap, great Sherlock Holmes fan, kind of socially inept, but he was a lot of fun, and he meant well. He just didn't respect people's personal space. He'd get right up in your face and ask you stupid questions, but he was a great Sherlock Holmes fan, and for some reason he fell in love with bookbinding. He was taking bookbinding courses someplace. And he'd bring disaster problems that he had to us at Campbell-Logan, try and figure out what he should do now that he'd screwed it up after his class. But he had a little house in Osseo that he invited me to one time. He was having trouble adjusting a blade on a paper cutter. So I went to see him, and he showed me his spare bedroom, which is like Sherlock Holmes' bedroom. It was decorated just like 221B Baker Street. It was just incredible. But Al Mackler was kind of a strange guy, but he meant well. He was very sincere, and I bet he was part of the Baker Street Irregulars, I bet, wasn't he? Now, is it Norwegian Explorers or Baker Street Irregulars?
So, Baker Street Irregulars is the New York club, and he was a member of that. And then the local one is called the Norwegian Explorer.
Okay.
And his 221B room moved from Osseo to the Minnesota. It actually was in Wilson, and now it's in the Ampersand Library on the second floor.
Ampersand, I used to get the Norwegian Explorers, Minnesota Manuscript Society, and Ampersand Society mixed up in my mind when I was just starting out with this group. They all kind of interlocked some way or other, and often there were joint meetings between Manuscript and Ampersand, and somewhere or other the Norwegian Explorers would get involved with them sometimes. So they were all kind of one homogeneous thing to me. And I think the membership of those three organizations are what began MCBA in 1983. That there were mailing lists and stuff were funneled to MCBA as interested parties that might be interested in supporting this. Now, audience participation. Anybody have anything they want to ask or add? All right.
Give us some time.
Who was the couple? There was a couple that had their own, printing stuff, and they moved to Texas, and they were
Ah.
watchers.
That was Maristo Stahl and Michael Terchow,
That's
Pentagram
Michael
Press.
Terrell. Yeah. I visited them. They're amazing bird watchers.
Yeah. They left Texas, moved.
Texas is a great spot to bird watch.
They left Texas and moved to Port Washington, Port Townsend, Washington.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're going, yeah.
Yeah. But I haven't been able to keep track of them up there.
Yeah, and they were younger than some of you.
Yeah, yeah. Michael came to the Twin Cities from Markesan, Wisconsin, and he got a job at MCAD. That's what it was. He got a job teaching printing at Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and Merce was the girlfriend of Steve Clay, who had Greenery Books. It happened to be in my building at the time. And she and Steve was always going off to New York to sell books in New York. And Merce was there, and Michael was there, and those two hit it off and kind of aced Steve out of the way. And anyway, they took over. I think Steve just killed Grainery and moved to New York. They had a falling out.
And Merce ended up working for the Bakken Library.
Really? Huh. She and Mike, when they moved to Texas, I think Merce was pretty intelligent. If I remember the rumor right, she made $1 million in the stock market. And they were able to kind of retire at that point. But
Edward Yanowski ever part of the Ampersand Club?
Yanowski never was, no.
And by the way, there's a great article in the most recent
Big fancy picture.
Yeah,
MHS.
yeah.
Minnesota History Magazine.
A really good article.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody should read it.
Oh, Paul Nelson wrote that.
Yeah.
We play basketball with them, David.
Well, there you go.
Well, many of you guys I know well. Some of you, I have no idea who you are. I'm sorry about that. I used to be the young doe or young buck. Now I'm the old goat, you know, and I'm sorry about that. Yes,
Hi, first time here at the Ampersand Club.
welcome.
Thank you. But, you know, we live in an era of electronic books, artificial intelligence. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the future of the printed word.
The sage speaks.
You know, no, I heard it.
He was hoping he wouldn't get it. Yeah.
You know, I don't know exactly how to answer that. I think there's always going to be print, ink on paper of some kind or other. I don't know who's going to be around to read it, but I can't believe that printed material is going to go the way of cursive writing. You know, I can't believe that. You know, I used to tell a story about somebody I was giving directions to, and turn the handle clockwise. They didn't know what that was. They only had digital watches, you know. That could happen with print also, I guess. I can't believe that though. It's too educational to walk away from, just being able to read something.
Well, I was amazed at how, like, a first grader knows what a font is and has favorite fonts. So there's something about that.
Yes,
You mentioned MCBA's launching, and my indirect memory is that the Cowles family was helping that along.
very much.
And it seems to me they might have, or should have been members of Ampersand. Were they? Or
I don't think any of the Cowles ever were members of Ampersand.
missed opportunity?
Yeah,
Very helpful in MCBA.
yeah, they sure were. Yeah, they were. We met in the Cowles Media boardroom for our first Ampersand meetings, or MCBA meetings for many times. Jim Alcott was the president there, and we had many meetings there. But I don't think Jim was ever a member of Ampersand.
How about Jim Sitter? Was he ever a member?
Jim Sitter was a member, yeah. He isn't currently. His brother Joe is a member. We don't know where Jim Sitter is. Nobody's heard from him for a long time.
He's in Minneapolis. Does Joe ever come into town? Could we get him to come and
He,
speak again?
he spoke 3-4 years ago
Yeah.
on it. I don't think I haven't heard him say that he wanted to come back and speak again, but we can ask him.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a kind of a meeting there.
He does, you know, he's still, his Minneapolis address is still valid as of Christmas. I know that. His Christmas card hasn't come back undeliverable.
But totally randomly.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
What's the origin of Incunabula?
Incunabula. Incunabula refers to the first 50 years of printing with movable type, or the beginning of a new artistic venture. And when I bought the building downtown, we didn't have a name on it, and we were looking for a name for the building. There were several tenants in the building, and I had a contest going, 1 month's free rent for the best name for the building. And Jerry Lang came up with Incunabula and spelled it I-N-K instead of I-N-C. So he thought Gutenberg would have had ink on his hands, I-N-K. There were other, Toad Hall was another name that was proposed for it. and just kind of crazy things. Incunabula art sounded good, and the artistic beginning. Campbell-Logan Bindery had never owned property before I bought that building. My father rented spaces all his life when he was running the place. And that was his big mistake when he finally could have bought property and settled down and had something stable. He was renting space. When I took it over from him, we were renting space on 26th and Minnehaha Avenue in the back of Retract Manufacturing that made truck mirrors. We'd been there 12 years, and we were kind of running out of space. I went to see the building manager. Can I just get like 1,000 feet to store a binder's board or something in? You're running out of space. I said, sure, we got plenty of space over here. My father decided he was going to retire, move to Mexico. He threw his keys on my desk and said, here you go, kid, it's yours. Don't forget me, send me a check every month. The next day, the building manager came down and said, you don't have a lease with us. Get out in 30 days. Yeah, it was kind of a surprise.
That's why he gave you the keys?
Yeah. Anyway, because we had been kind of short on space, and we thought we might have to move just for that, I'd looked around a little bit and had looked at a couple other buildings. But at that point, with 30 days notice, there was no place that I could afford to buy or move into or anything. It wasn't a brand new place. And there was a little industrial park out in Golden Valley called International Market Square on Douglas Drive and Highway 55. It was just being built. And they had space that we could move into the next day, except we had to have it wired and stuff for machinery. So we got out of the Incunabula, or the Retract building, and moved there. We were there for about 1.5 years. Now that building, I mean, we didn't even have a paved parking lot. It was mud and sand and dirt, and there was a swamp right across the parking lot from us. It was a really nice little building, but it was very undervalued as far as property tax went, because what had been there before was a goat farm. It takes about 3 years for property tax to adjust to the improved value of the land. And we were there for 18 months, and I could see the writing on the wall, we got to get out of here. That not only the common area maintenance fee is going to kill me on the thing, but property tax is going to drive me nuts. So we started looking around, I started looking around and found this thing downtown and ended up making a deal on the 212 North 2nd Street building. That's the...
Was that pretty depressed around that time when you got it?
Yeah, very, very depressed. That building was this far away from being a tear down. The roof leaked so bad we took water in the basement through 4 floors of the building. There was no working heat, and electric was little extension cords run all over the place from whatever fuse box might have a fuse in it. The elevator was in terrible shape, and the basement commonly would flood. That meant the elevator would be grounded out. We'd have to crank it up by hand and dry it out, and it was a mess. The first couple of years were really, really tough there, but we survived. Yes?
I just wanted to make a comment on the Will Powers meeting
Yeah.
of the Ludlow caster and Ludlow type design. That was, for at least for me, a really significant meeting, not just because it was so well presented and so well prepared, but it just kind of opened up a new avenue of knowledge for me.
Glad you enjoyed that.
Yeah, and
Phil did too. He was part of that.
I remember it happening in the clubhouse section with the popcorn machine there.
Yep.
And one of my favorite parts was the demo that he did, where we got to set the Ludlow max and cast. And I still have the Ampersand slug that I cast.
Oh, neat.
In pride of place on my.
Huh. When you used to have school tours that would come through there, I would let the kids cast their name and type and take it home for a rubber stamp once in a while. But, yeah. Anyway, it was a great old building. I miss it. Yes, ma'am.
What would you like to see as the future of the Ampersand Club?
I would like to see a few younger people join it. Most of us are getting pretty gray around the gills here. And, you know, if anybody is ever interested in serving on our board, please let us know. That John is president now. I don't know who might be interested in filling in for that when John decides to hang it up, but it won't be me.
I ain't gonna be like Peggy. Term limits.
25.
I'd like to see some youth come into it. If we can find anybody that's interested in books that's younger. Yeah.
Everybody can look at Peter.
Yeah. Anybody else have something to add?
When in doubt, there's always Peggy Corswell Canada.
There is.
President for
Are
life.
both useful,
I
youthful
love
members.
Ampersand.
The Ampersand's great. It's been an important part of my life.
Advisor to the president.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming.
Oh, this is great.